welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and today we have the return of the original host. It is Kelli.
Hello, everyone.
2022 debut, just like the previous hosts this year so far. So you are back for 2022, which is good.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Already a good start for the year. But if this is your very first episode, the way we format it is the chunk of the episode is news. And this month we do have What's New on Netflix, the March 2022 highlights. And then we end it with the Brokehead Block, which is what Kelli and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's go right in and explore sector number 497. Capcom has announced they had a countdown, and Bobby was talking about it on our Discord, and he properly predicted Street Fighter 6, and that was one of the announcements. But the one more relevant to me, because I haven't played a Street Fighter 4, 5, or probably won't be playing 6, but they did announce a Capcom Fighting Collection.
The collection will have 10 games when it launches, and those titles will be nothing I've ever heard of before, but I'm sure relevant to someone. We have Vampire Savior 2, Darkstalkers, Night Warrior, Vampire Hunter 2, Cyberbots, Red Earth, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Street Fighter 2, and Super Gym Fighter Minimix.
Each one got a slight upgrade to play in 4K, and they will have online play, extra menu features like concept artwork. The Darkstalkers community is the one that Scott and I always talk about, that collection that they came out with back on the PlayStation 3. They did Night Stalkers and Darkstalkers, Night Warriors 1 and 2, and they released it as a digital-only version. And there were rumors that they were trying to see how much interest there was in Darkstalkers to try to do a 3D style, kind of like Street Fighter 4, but with Darkstalkers. And it did not sell well. So that's when Scott and I accepted, like, they're probably not going to do ever a new Darkstalkers game. Morgan, she's the most popular character from the series. She'll keep showing up in Marvel vs. Capcom every now and again in the Capcom Fighters, and they're still making product for her, merchandise and art books that they still release. But otherwise, I don't expect any Darkstalkers anything. They announced this collection. Scott and I are like, all right, we're going to buy this collection as well. And hopefully now it has other games aside from Darkstalkers. And if enough people buy it, maybe this is also another test to see if now people are going to buy Darkstalkers. I checked Twitter, and right underneath the announcement, there's a Darkstalkers fan who goes, I don't want a Darkstalkers collection. I want a new game. And someone immediately beat me to it. And it's like, what you fuckers don't understand is that you need to buy these collections. That's how they'll make the new game. And that's when I told Scott on Discord immediately. I'm like, these idiots, you can't even convince a Darkstalkers fan to buy a collection. I'll buy it, and I'm doing my part, but I also will understand when they're like, yeah, we're not going to do any more of these Darkstalkers collections, because you can't get the fans to rally up and put their money where their mouth is. You can't just ask for a new game. You got to vote with your dollar.
And I know that's something you talk about all the time on here, but of course people say, well, I don't want to spend money on that. I just want to wait for this new thing, but you're not going to get the new thing unless you invest. So I don't know. There's no convincing people like that. They're just going to keep asking for this and being told how to get it and just not do it.
I believe it was Vampire Savior 1 and 2 that are also Darkstalkers spin-offs, and those two we haven't ever gotten in the US. They released in Japan, so we're getting technically two brand new Darkstalkers games that we've never played, so this should count. Like, buy the fucking collection, buy the game. As soon as this goes up for pre-order, I know Scott and I are going to pre-order it. Bobby put up a screenshot of a standard edition of the game, so it sounds like they're either doing a collector's version, or I heard there's a bundle where there's also a Capcom Street Fighter collection where you can get almost every Street Fighter arcade game as like another bundle or an extra game. So that might be the one I go with. I'm not too sure, but I'm definitely going to get this Capcom collection. Street Fighter 6, that was the other big one, but first, the collection is set to release this year on June 24th.
Like you mentioned, Street Fighter 6 was the big one. They had a short teaser of an old Ryu and Luke challenging each other along with a summer 2022 release.
That was basically it on this one. Just the teaser saying it's coming out this year. There will be DLC fighters and costumes. We've seen that before. People pointed out that this Ryu does look older. His clothing looks weathered down. They brought back bearded Ryu, which
he can't even buy new clothes.
He can't. So the idea is that he trains and his chi goes with his clothing and all of that. It's up and down because you can't change the way Ryu looks, because if you do, then it's a problem. The most they've changed is they've added that beard, which they've done before. And when they released the game, I believe fans called him Hot Ryu. And in the game, when you play, you choose Hot Ryu instead.
Stop.
So that's back.
But they don't have to change the way he looks to give him nice clothes.
Just brand new
Just
clothing.
Brand new clothes. What is hot about wearing the same clothes for a billion years? I don't get it.
Ask Goku, ask Vegeta. Well, I guess they've changed, right?
Yes.
They've changed their
Vegeta
clothing.
has changed his clothes a lot. Goku, not so much, but we don't like him, so.
Well, they have wives, and I don't think Ryu does. I think Ryu only trains, and that's it.
That's the difference right there.
There's a new theme park that is opening up in Japan. It is all Studio Ghibli, and they promise to charge less than Disney parks for their entry.
This is so brilliant, but according to one of the park's planning managers, Tetsuya Akamura, Ghibli Park will have a tiered ticket system. This means attendees will pay more for each area of the park they wish to visit. Right now, Akamura says the team wants full access ticket to cost under $35 when it opens this fall.
Theme park goers in Japan are used to paying twice that, as Tokyo's Disneyland can cost fans close to $90, while Universal Studios Japan is often close to about $80. So for double the price, you can go to those bigger parks. I'm sure Studio Ghibli is not going to offer you the rides or the experience that you would get from Universal or Disney. But for $35 to go to a Studio Ghibli park, make it a day instead of a full vacation, I think it's the smart move. And having it be a tiered system, I know they used to do that here in Florida with Disney many years ago, back when the park first opened, Magic Kingdom, where you'd buy tickets to go on rides. And it sounds like they're doing something sort of similar with Ghibli's. If you want this area of the park, then you got to have the premium ticket. And at most, like they said, $35.
I think that is a really smart move. We're kind of seeing it here in Orlando where it's not easy, right? It's not really a reasonable option for everyone to get to go to these theme parks because you feel like you have to get so much in your day for the price that you're paying, right? Over $100 to get into Walt Disney World for a day. How much are you limiting the people that can go to your park? And then how often they can come back and these different kinds of things. It just makes more sense to, okay, let's make it affordable. You're probably going to have more people who go. So you're not really missing out on any money, as if you just said, oh, yep, $100 just like everybody else. Then you're going to have less people who go and probably still make the same amount. So makes sense to me. I'm ready to hop on a plane and go. I want to go to Ponyo Land.
Water park portion with Ponyo.
Yes, it'd be perfect.
Or a ride based on Howl's Moving Castle. Or if they built it and you can go inside of it, that would be kind of neat.
How cool. Yeah, even if a lot of it was just like walking through, right?
Yes.
And seeing these different scenes, I think that would be something that fans would really love and gravitate towards, right? Restaurants with themed menus. Yes, rides are really cool, but you're spending most of your time waiting in line for that ride. So rather than jump into that expense right away for $35, just give me scenes that I can walk to. Let me really immerse myself in these movies and experience these things.
About 10 years ago, it used to be that people would ask us, you live in Orlando, Central Florida area, you probably go to the parks all the time, and we definitely went more often than we do now. There's a number of factors to that, but even if we didn't have Leo, we weren't parents, and we didn't have the jobs that we did, it would be difficult. Like, if you just imagine you and I trying to go to a park right now without any kids. The parks are really expensive. They've priced them up. They've started charging for the fast pass lines, which I don't blame them for, because people are paying for them. They're still selling out.
Right.
It used to be up to this point where they would run out of fast pass for any ride in a matter of seconds. People would wake up at midnight or whenever they went up and immediately queue up, and they'd be set for the day. So then they started charging, and even now that's still a sellout. So again, I don't blame them on that, but they are pricing out I think the local community especially. I don't know if they're still offering annual passes or if they're doing any kind of Florida discounts, but it does feel like the riffraff is no longer welcome, if you will, at Disney.
And I feel like I could really talk a lot about this topic. So especially living in Orlando, Central Florida, we have a I know a lot of people who work at Disney, and so even talking about, yes, they're pricing out the locals, right? But then what does that do to the workers who are there? Because they still need a lot of workers, and they need them now, and they're not really focused on what that looks like. And so for so many years, and I'm sure for so many people, that park seems like, magical Disney, the best experience you're ever going to have. And the reality is, for the price you're paying, it's really not anymore, right? You'll get to see some cool things and maybe enjoy it. But to your point, even if we were just, two adults with no other responsibilities, it's really not something. Even talking about Universal, it's so expensive and it's hot. And for the day that you really get, and people are listening probably like, oh, because you're from Orlando. Well, okay, sure, that's a piece of it. We've, lived around this a lot, but, once or twice and on a vacation is one thing. But to really, like you said, a lot of their income used to come from locals. And I really don't think that that's the place for them right now.
I do miss the Harry Potter worlds in Universal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that'd be the one spot that I'd immediately run to. When the Nintendo Land opens up with Universal, I think we covered that a couple years ago. That's another thing that I would love to visit and check out. Again, a one-time only. I don't see myself coming back to Nintendo Land all the time.
Right.
Especially since they don't have a Star Fox area, so that's kind of bullshit. But I'd also be the only guy in the Star Fox area. So that I do miss. And then Epcot, of course. I do think that's the one exception to... If you're going for rides, you will definitely not get your money's worth out of a ticket. But for us, where we do like to go to Epcot, we like to go to the different countries, eat around the world, check out the different merch, and really, what is it, a mile and a half or so going around the showcase? It's neat to see all of that stuff, and it's a little bit more impressive to, I guess, adults, and that would make it more worth it. But any of the other parks, honestly, maybe Animal Kingdom, because Leo can see all the animals. We have successfully taken him there.
Right.
He can see the dinosaur statues. He might be old enough in a couple of years to go on the dinosaur ride. So those are the only two rides or sections that I have my eye on. Even if you think about Magic Kingdom, where would we take him? Maybe some of the Small World, what used to be Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Winnie the Pooh. Haunted Mansion, we might be able to get away with. I don't know how the lines are now.
Tom Sawyer's Island is always a favorite of mine, and very few people go there, but it is a pain in the butt to get to because it's all the way in the back of the park, and then you got to take the boat to really walk around and go through a few mines and say, well, that was fun.
I wish them a lot of success, though, with Studio Ghibli's park. We have the latest cinema master who had some things to say about the MCU and the Marvel Universe. And this isn't the first time he said anything, but this is the latest one. This time from Francis Ford Coppola, the great Francis Ford Coppola. I like Francis Ford Coppola, always have. He directed
He's the best.
Apocalypse Now.
Just the best.
He did The Godfather, which many consider to be one of the best films of all time. Yep. He recently slammed the recent major studio films in an interview with GQ. So not just the MCU, but in general, all major studio films.
So we do have a quote from him, and I'm going to try my best not to butcher it.
Do you want me to take it over?
I can do it. I'm going to try. Whew. At least they're prepared now. They know. I haven't been here for a while. I'm a little rusty. So in this interview, he said, quote, "There used to be studio films. Now there are Marvel pictures. And what is a Marvel picture? A movie that is made over and over and over and over and over again to look different."
You skipped that line. He says a Marvel picture is one prototype movie that is made over and over.
Okay.
That's literally cookie cutter formula that we make fun of on Twitter all the time.
Even the talented people, you could take Dune, made by Denis
Villeneuve.
There you go. Thank you. An extremely talented, gifted artist. And you could take No Time to Die, directed by Cary Fukunaga. Extremely gifted, talented, beautiful artists, and you could take both those movies and you could go and pull the same sequence out of both of them and put them together. The same sequence where all the cars crash into each other. They all have that stuff in it. And they almost have to have it if they're going to justify their budget. And that's the good films and the talented filmmakers. End quote.
I do like that he said the Marvel prototype is just the same shit over and over again. Even the good movies, and that's when he moves over to Dune, and he makes sure to make it separate. Like, those are not the good movies, but even the good movies have some type of formula that have to justify their budget. Obviously, you and I agree on the Marvel formula. It's a prototype. For better or worse, I don't like it. It's not for me. It is the same shit over and over again. But guess what? People buy it, and that's why they keep making the same thing over and over again. So again, I can't blame Disney for shoveling the same crap to people because they love it. They're eating it right up. Now, where he's talking about major movie studios, I think there's a better discussion to be had here when he's talking about Dune, he's talking about No Time to Die, James Bond. that's where it gets a little dicey, and that's where some people have maybe disagreed with him. And I kind of want to hear your take on it, where he says that even those movies have like okay, here's where we have to insert an action sequence, and here's where we have to do this, and here's where we have to do that. Does it seem like there is, even in those, a type of pattern to when they build out these movies?
Well, sure, but there's a pattern in any story that you read, right? I've made it no secret on this show that I read a lot of romance novels, and I can tell you the exact percentage of the book when things are going to happen, because they happen this way in 90% of the books that I read, and that's just storytelling. And you even learn about it in school when you talk about storytelling, right? These are the way that things progress. And so naturally, you're going to have some of those same themes throughout movies, throughout any type of stories. And yes, sometimes you get ones that are different, and those are the movies that we consider artsy, right? And really challenge our way of thinking, because it's not the pattern that we're used to. But the reality is that pattern, and again, I agree that Marvel kind of takes it too far with being the exact same thing. But because that pattern is comfortable, it's easier for us to, I guess you would say, pay attention, fall in love with the movie, really relax and feel like we're getting the most out of that experience that's supposed to pull us from reality. Because we're, okay, these things are happening and now something horrible is going to happen, and then there's going to be this big fight and then this, great resolution at the end. So yes, I get what he's saying, that perfect, these two scenes are the same, very similar in the sense that all this action has to happen, but that's storytelling. That's what people gravitate towards in this space. And at least they mix it up enough that it's not a cookie cutter of the same movie that we saw last week.
And I think inherently in people, as they're watching a movie, as they're reading a story, I think that's why we have the same type of ups and downs as we consume a book or watch a movie or a cartoon or a show, because that's what we're entertained by. That keeps our attention. So when we have a low, we expect a high, and we don't want too much of the flat areas of dialogue or character building. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it works. But when you're talking about the general audience, there is an expectation. And I think over time, all these years that people have been writing stories, let alone movies, but just stories, we've kind of nailed this formula that people seem to enjoy the most. And that's where we're following that. And as you said, when there's an independent film, you can find it, and it could be an hour and a half of a still shot of a cup of coffee. I don't know. It could be literally anything.
I would enjoy that. I do like coffee, so.
And then at the very end, the sledgehammer, like out of nowhere, like the hour and a half mark, and people would be like clapping, brilliant, and there might be great things to that movie, but we're talking about a general audience and a storytelling, and I'm sure he knows about that budget justifying. You got to say, okay, you want $400 million to make this movie, then what are you going to have in here that's going to justify that? And I'm sure a lot of that does play into that. I don't think he's wrong in what he's saying at all. And I know people take away immediately, like another guy that's bashing in the MCU. It's like, all right, well, that's a part of the message here. I think the bigger thing that he's talking about is all these major movies in general. And I don't disagree with him.
No, I don't disagree at all. But to your point, if I'm a studio and you're making a movie that I want to be successful for the general audience, I'm going to understand and have researched enough to know these are the key pieces that the general audience is going to look for, or else they'll be unsatisfied and they won't purchase it, and sales won't continue, and they won't recommend it to their friends. So absolutely, that is a reality of where we're at. I think we'll see fewer and fewer of these independent movies as we move forward, because studios will understand this is going to be for a very limited audience. We're going to make this movie, but it does need to be low budget, because not a lot of people are going to come out. We'll still have some people who will watch it and enjoy it, and you'll probably get awards for it, because those are the movies that really stand out more to people. But to that point, they're more uncomfortable. So you watch it once and you say, well, yep, that was good. I don't need to watch it again, but it was brilliant.
Right. Just like Mother, just like Apocalypse Now even. That's a very uncomfortable movie to watch. And the filmmakers, the actors, everyone that went through it, it was an incredibly rough process to go through. I believe Martin Sheen ended up suffering a stroke while they were filming the movie, and then came back and finished it. So it's one of those things that it's insane. Yeah. And some of these movies are that. And I saw in the tweets immediately, of course, people are like, I tried watching The Godfather. That was boring as fuck. And it's like, well, I expect that from someone who in their profile has like Spider-Man stands and I love Disney and Marvel, and it's like, of course you wouldn't like it. And that's, it's partially an insult, but it's also like, I don't expect you to. These are very different movies. Enjoy the superhero stuff. Go watch Guardians, go watch Spider-Man No Way Home, and that's your stuff. But if you want something way different, then I don't expect you to like Apocalypse Now or any of the other things that by Martin Scorsese I don't expect them to like. Bobby and I talked about that last week. The Guillermo movie, he heard someone go off about the Fish movie from a couple years ago that he did, The Fish Man, and how someone in his store was like, that
Shape of Water,
about how terrible. That's how he described it, and it's stuck in my head, and I don't remember. I never bothered to look it up again, and we liked it.
Doug Jones, please.
Dougie Jones. I was telling him I expected it to be a Hellboy prequel.
Really? Oh, that would have been
That would have been awesome, right? So he was saying that someone like that probably likes MCU movies if they hated Shape of Water. It's a matter of time before the next big director, the next big actor says something or is asked about the Marvel movies, and people are like, why do they keep asking them? And it's like, because of this, because people pick it up. You and I are talking about it. Websites put up headlines. People click on it so that they can hate the brilliant movies that these amazing filmmakers make. And then that's the headline for like a week. And then it ends up on every podcast, YouTube channel. And you'll hear people that agree and disagree, but we're both on Coppola's side on this one.
It's just so unfortunate that this opens a door for people to try and watch those movies and go into it with the mindset of, well, I like the Marvel movies, and if it's not like that, I'm going to be mad about it because he said something negative about the Marvel movies, and they don't even give it a chance. They don't even step back and say, let me see this for what it is and try to digest it and really understand what's going on and the deeper message here. They're just looking for that very base level, let me be entertained for 3.5 hours so I can pause my movie and go to the bathroom 4 times and whatever they need to do. And yeah, that's just unfortunate. But to your point, they'll continue to ask. They'll continue to get responses like this, and we'll continue to talk about it. So there we go.
There are some great changes happening in 3 weeks. According to Deadline, WarnerMedia chairman Ann Sarnoff will not remain in position after the Discovery merger. Is that correct still, chairman? Is there an updated term for that?
No,
chairwoman?
Probably still chairman, because you still have firemen, you still have policemen.
Firewomen, policewomen.
You could say chairperson.
I just thought that was funny because I'm like, or is that actually the position name, officially, chairman?
Oh, chairman?
You know what I mean?
Maybe. I don't think I know. I mean, I'm just a lonely peon down here. I will never be a chairman of anything.
Well, why don't we like Ann Sarnoff? Why is this a good thing?
So Ann Sarnoff had previously mentioned that the Snyder Cut would end the Snyderverse, and that the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad would not release.
I still remember when she was first appointed as WarnerMedia's head, there was a campaign to send in letters to her and tell her thank you and congratulations and release the Snyder Cut. And there were a bunch of flowers that got sent to her office. There was a huge push to like make her feel welcome, but also release the Snyder Cut. And obviously none of that worked because she is very much against the Snyderverse, and she has spoken very negatively about Snyder, at least his trilogy. She calls it his trilogy of films when we know it's not. Talked about Ayer and very bluntly said, we will not release Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. So there's no budging on Ann Sarnoff, and the Deadline article pointed out that she has made very little impact at WarnerMedia. A guy like David Zaslav, who has taken over for all of this, he's the head of Discovery's media portion of streaming, and now he's going to be heading up Warner Brothers as well. Doesn't look like he's as dumb as these people because he's not keeping Ann Sarnoff. He's not keeping Jason Kyler, who had that plan of let's put HBO Max and theater releases together day one, which ended up fucking up a lot of relationships with Christopher Nolan, with directors, actors, Gal Gadot, Patty Jenkins. And David must have seen that too and gone, yeah, you cost us quite a lot. You're also not going to be here to stay. So this is all positive news. I think I will get most okay, I think we've definitely, and I think we're getting Justice League 2 and 3. I'm going to make it clear. I think the Snyderverse is restored, especially with the hints that Zach has been putting up, Clay Staub as well. But if we get Toby Emmerich out of there, that's like the head of the snake. That's the one that we really need to make sure that hopefully Zaslav goes, and you were in charge of all of this. Get the fuck out.
Those would all be great things, and time will tell. But the merger is set for March 17th, so this is one day before the 1-year anniversary of Zack Snyder's Justice League release on HBO Max.
A lot of people have gotten excited about that. They're like, all right, March 18th is right afterward. That would be a great day to announce a Justice League 2 or 3. That'd be an amazing time to win back all of the positive fans and everything. Just do some goodwill towards the fan base. And people have pointed out, though, that Zack still has Rebel Moon that he's making this year. He's filming them back-to-back for Netflix. He's obviously got the other Netflix projects as well, more Army of the Dead that we're getting, that Norse mythology animated series or movie that he's doing with Jay Oliva. It would be a number of years before they started work on, or at least started filming Justice League 2 and 3. Now, I'm assuming they would film them back-to-back, just like he's doing Rebel Moon, just knock them out, have all these actors under one roof. Realistically, how long do you think they would, one, announce that the Snyderverse is restored and that we'd actually start seeing production begins in 2024?
I do think production wouldn't begin for several years. So I think 2024 is probably, even 2025 is probably realistically when that would happen. It would be great to announce it on the 18th, right? Boom, we're bringing all this back. But again, I don't think that's realistic. I think they're going to merger. I think they're going to settle in a little bit, start to get the ball rolling. And when you're a little closer to starting production, then that's when you're going to announce it. So maybe in a year or two, and then you're going to say, oh, BT dubs, like we're already working on the script, or the script is done, right? And we're going to start production on this date. Because if you announce it now and you're still 3 years out, yes, you're going to have this big push of woohoo. And then you're going to have a few years where things start to settle down for the majority. There will be you who's still every podcast like, yeah, it's coming back. Only 200 more weeks, right? But you're going to wait until you're a little bit closer. So you get that hype, and then you're able to hype again soon after, and then hype again and continue that work.
So it doesn't lose too much steam after
Correct.
the announcement or lose interest as far as when they do it. I'm going to keep my expectations pretty conservative as well. I don't think that as soon as, and I know a lot of people are expecting like Zaslav will take over and be like, all right, you're restoring it now, right? And I don't think it's going to be that quick.
Right.
I do still think, though, that we're going to get an answer this year as to whether or not they plan on making more of these movies with Zack. And maybe, like you said, that's probably too soon to say, but if we can at least get a very definitive answer as to, yes, I'm working with Warner Brothers again, even if Zack leaves it at that, I think we would all be like, it's done. Like, this is good. This is already a great thing. If you can get Nolan back, you can easily get people like Zack Snyder who want to make these movies, people like Ben Affleck and everyone else to come back and make these films. And getting rid of people like Ann Sarnoff are definitely the right moves. And that's definitely a positive. Toby needs to go, though. I think I would be happier if Toby went and Ann stayed, just because Toby's definitely like, he has a larger influence.
You said that Toby's contract was up next year?
Yes, because he was trying to shop himself around to Netflix, and Netflix said no.
No. So I wouldn't even be surprised if it's after he's out of the way.
Well, they might renew it. That's what we're afraid of, that he'll renew contract. Hamada is until next year as well. We know Walter Hamada's contract is set through 2023, so he won't be gone until 2024, but he is like a pawn, I think, in comparison to people like Sarnoff or Toby.
Yeah, but if I'm stepping in to take over, and again, this is all speculation, but if I'm stepping in to take over something, and I know that we're going to continue this work, and I know that these two people really tried hard and were real dicks about it, then I'm going to wait, either fire them or wait until their contract is up, and then I'm going to have that big push and say, great, you're out of the way. Here's my middle finger. We're moving forward with this, because I know if they're still there, even if I'm throwing my weight and saying, this is what we're going to do and you need to be behind it. One, my fans aren't going to believe them when they're pushing these things that I'm telling them to do. Two, they're probably going to do some sneaky ass shit to try and still shut it down. And three, I would rather hand them those papers and say, hi, you're done. By the way, I'm restoring this because this is what needs to happen, and just crush their dreams even more.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird shit that happened. Like, remember when the Snyder Cut leaked on the Tom and Jerry movie, supposedly? Like, oh, it was an accident.
Oh,
it's like,
yes.
when does that happen ever in streaming, ever? Like, it was deliberate.
Right, of
and
course.
when they leaked the trailer early as well, that was a big deal. Like, someone is internally sabotaging this, and people like Toby are probably putting out those signs.
Right.
Or Jeff Johns, who knows who it could be, but that's why we get rid of these people who are honestly destroying the DC brand. Right. You're seeing it right now, where the Battinson and there's no Superman. It's Supergirl from The Flash, and then Old Man Keaton. That's your fucking DC film universe right now. It's embarrassing. And all these Warner Brothers shills that are just like, well, let's just give it a chance. You're settling for that shit. Like, instead of asking for something better, or you're supporting it with your dollar, get the fuck out of here. Go enjoy your Pattinson stuff, but then also don't get upset when we boycott it, because it's only 40 of us. It's like, oh, they're a small minority only that want to restore the Snyderverse. But then when The Flash flops, you'll be blaming the Snyderverse fans. It's like, wait a second, are we a massive movement or not? You can't have it both ways. But don't get mad at us when we boycott our stuff,
right,
and choose not to watch these things. We're not going to blindly support something just because it's DC Comics. Longtime Broquettes know you and I are big DC fans, and it's weird to say that this is the first Batman movie I'm not excited to see, and that I'm not going to go watch. And you wouldn't have predicted that 3 years ago. That's how bad they've destroyed the brand.
Right. Absolutely. Well, hopefully with this merger, we are able to see the restoration of the Snyderverse, things start to move in a different direction. I hope whoever is in charge is listening to our podcast, obviously. Specifically ours. They play it through the whole studio, right, when it releases. But making these changes and really re-inspiring the fan base.
That does do it for our bulk of news this week. Let's head on over to this month's What's New on Netflix, the March 2022 highlights.
This is not the full list. This is just what pertains to us, what we are interested in. You can always go over to Google, type in what's new on Netflix for the month, and get the full list there.
So go through the full list first, and then we'll come back and see which ones we're interested in. Shrek 1 and 2, Where the Wild Things Are, Power Rangers Dino Fury Season 2, and that's a Netflix exclusive, and Bridgerton Season 2. I put Shrek 1 and 2 here because I like Shrek 2 a lot. I did not like Shrek 1 growing up. And I watched it later on. I remember it being huge and I never got around to seeing it, but I watched Shrek 2 because of Puss in Boots. I don't like cats, but it's a Spaniard cat running around.
Antonio Banderas.
As Zorro. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm in. So I like that one. But have you noticed that the generations that, I don't know if it's our generation or younger, that are now either rediscovering Shrek, or it's become like this massive thing again with them. You're seeing Shrek memes pop up again. So either they're rediscovering or people are getting old enough to start making memes of these things. Same thing with those Scooby-Doo live action movies from the 2000s. Every time we played it, I worked with someone who was 19, 20 at the comic shop. She would play it at the shop, and then other customers about her age would also be like, oh, this is cinema right here. Like, they grew up on those old live action Scooby-Doo movies. And it's like, I don't know if it's a meme to like those things, but much like Shrek, it has this weird resurgence.
So you know what it is with Shrek, is it came out so long ago that those people who watched it now have children. And so their children are probably now old enough that we can actually show them Shrek, because there were things that we should not have been watching in that movie.
Yeah.
But it was the 2000s, so nobody cared. It wasn't 2022. It was early 2000s. So they're now showing it to their kids, starting to like it again, or, teenagers, whatever, are falling in love with that movie. I remember really liking it. I feel like if I watched it now, I wouldn't, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this is what it is. But I was really into Shrek 1 and 2. I was actually listening to an 80s playlist at work the other day, and it was all songs from Shrek, and somebody's like, is this a Shrek playlist? I'm like, you're old enough to know Shrek? But definitely, Hey Now You're an All-Star will just be forever the Shrek song in my mind.
And I Need a Hero, for me, will always be Shrek 2, with the big gingerbread man. Saddest death in cinema history.
Oh, you're right. I do remember that one. That was a pretty good movie. Never watched 3.
Yeah, maybe I watched it once.
It's where the Donkey Dragon babies?
I think so. And then there's also a 4th one.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh, with ogre babies.
Shrek Forever After, I think.
Oh, no, didn't watch that.
We saw Where the Wild Things Are in theaters. I think it was because of the director. You didn't?
I did not see it. I haven't ever seen it.
It's a little depressing.
Aww.
Like, watching it. Like, it's not like the book at all. Or I guess it is. It's a lot like the book. It tells the same story, but the tone is not what I read when I was reading the book. And when you watch it, it's filmed beautifully. The special effects are incredible. If I remember correctly, they're actual big puppet costumes.
Oh, wow.
And then they CGI the faces and enhance some of the fur and whatnot. I do want to watch it again for the filmmaking of it, but I do remember not feeling kind of sad at the end of it. So that's the only thing where wouldn't call this a kid's movie. In fact, I'd probably say it's more for adults. Maybe the adults that grew up on the old book.
I would love to watch it. I did grow up on the old book. I've read the book to Leo. It is one that was gifted to us when he was very young. I can't say it's one of my favorite books. I think, I mean, going back to what we were just talking about that usual storytelling, right, model, I do feel that the story is a little boring, right? This kid imagines that he goes to this world, has a lot of fun, and then gets hungry and goes home. Like that's essentially the whole book. But Leo does enjoy it. He loves thinking about those monsters, right? And the wild rumpus and whatever they do over there. So I would love to see it, and especially for, like you said, the special effects and all those kind of things. I have heard that it's a beautiful movie.
I don't think we have much to say on Dino Fury other than I only included it because Leo was watching that season for a little bit. Primarily, I'm guessing, for the big dino robots. Yeah,
so he did watch season 1. Anyone with children knows they get stuck on something and you watch it over and over again. And so that was what he was watching for a little while. He enjoys the Power Rangers and the fighting, and of course that they turn into big old dinos and fight some more. So we will definitely play season 2 for him. I did hear that the Green Ranger comes out as a lesbian, and that was a big old thing.
What would they think of next?
It's 2022. I don't know. So
why is it always the Green Ranger that's like the surprise? Like, oh, and it's Tommy, and they're lesbian, they're gay. And I think one of them, it was a female. Like they did a female Green Ranger years ago.
Oh, that's this one.
It might be the same one, or they've now since like another generation
circled back to it. Yeah. So we'll probably put it on for him and see if he's interested again. And yeah, that's a good pick.
Yours was Bridgerton season 2, though.
I'm so excited. Yes, I'm very excited for Bridgerton season 2. I've already texted all my friends. We're going to have a Bridgerton party. It's going to be great.
All women in the world are going to be watching this, right?
All of us, except for my mom. She doesn't care. Gotcha. But my grandma cares.
That's right. Yeah, remember, she likes it.
She and I have talked about Bridgerton. So it's going to be great. For those of you who don't know, this is Anthony's story. So it follows Daphne. She was the main character in the first one. It follows her brother. And I have read the book, and the book was a good story. So as long as they stick to the same story, obviously there's going to be way more spicy times because those books are not very spicy. But the show definitely was. And Netflix has now learned that that's the only reason we watched it. So you know they're going to ramp it up a little bit.
Is the book done, like the story itself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. So I think there's like 8 kids in the family. So they did the stories of all 8 children, and then they did like an ever after to say here's where they are 10 years later or whatever.
And here's the book of them 10 years later. They're going to continue them if this season ends up being huge.
Maybe they've been out for a while.
It reminds me of like when Demon Slayer ended and Scott's like, no, the story's over. It's done. I'm like, but they just made the biggest movie, highest grossing movie in Japan ever. They're going to make more manga. He's like, nope, they're not. There are no more new stories. And they came out with like an interquill or whatever you call it, like a side story of some of the characters. But I'm still waiting for like, and here's the kids' stories because I am sure it's going to happen. Demon Slayer is so big.
The thing about romance novels, at least that I've noticed, is when you start getting into all their kids, then you start to kind of lose momentum. I don't know. I've never been interested in stories about their kids because I'm like, that's their kids. I don't know. Maybe because I'm a mom now and I'm like, I don't want to read about their kids. Like, they had a great romance. That was awesome. I don't need to see, right? I don't need to see how, like, you can give me another character in their same universe, but not necessarily their child.
Next week, we're going to have the What's New on HBO Max highlights, and that will be a much heftier list. Every now and again, Netflix is a lot lighter than what we usually get. Sometimes it's in around this time of year. And I don't know if HBO Max will be the same, but we will have those next week. Let's head into the more personal side of the podcast where we close out the Brokehead block. So, Palpa Kelly, what's been going on since you were last on? What have you been reading, playing, watching?
Haven't been watching a lot, so you and I have watched a few movies together, a few TV shows, but that's the extent of what I've been watching. Reading, I've only read 11 books this year, since January.
Only 11
that's it.
Since January.
Only 11 since January, so not that much. I'm having a hard time just finding things that interest me. I don't know, I'm in a book slump. But romance novels, who's surprised? Vampires and hockey players, I don't know. As far as what I've been doing, same old, like, anybody who's a parent, a working parent, understands a lot of your day is very much go to work, take care of, the kid, any random errands you need to do. I'm still very involved with my gym and feeling great progress from that, which is awesome. I think I'm up to 5 push-ups now, which is which is great, but much better than I was before. So Still very much enjoying that. Very focused this year. I think you and I both in the last year have really focused on personal wellness, taking care of ourselves so that we can be more present and feel better for our family. It's all cyclical. So still continuing that work. Some weeks are better than others. But I'm happy to be back on the show this week and get to interact with you and all the Brokettes. And I'm a plant mom. Sorry, I forgot to add that. I became a plant mom since I was last year.
What does that mean?
It means I have 15 plants in my house and I'm not stopping. Every time I go in a shop, ooh, look, a nice plant, and I got to buy it.
You're turning into Poison Ivy. You've already got the red hair.
You're
wearing flowers right now.
You're right. You are right. I did not realize it. Hopefully my kisses do not become poisonous.
Yeah, that's true.
Whoops, sorry. So yes, I have 15 plants around my house. Some are cactuses. Some are just regular cool looking plants because they're good for the air. They filter the air. And I don't know, they just make me happy. So I have to have a little app that tells me when to water them because I was watering them too much because, I don't know, I like taking care of them. But I have to go around the house and open all the windows so they get their sunlight, and just looking at them just makes me happy.
Well, I'm happy to have you on as a co-host, and I'm sure the Brokehead Core as well, along with the rest of the awesome co-hosts we do have each week right here on the show. I do have some Instagram story results that I want to share. It's the first time I do it, but I hold about 3-4 polls every week on Instagram stories, and it's got our website on it, a neat little graphic that I put together. And a couple of the results this week, I had Cowboy Bebop versus Neon Genesis Evangelion as far as like which is your preferred anime. And the Brokehead Core voted
Bebop?
Cowboy Bebop, yep.
Got it.
You're right. How'd you know?
One for Kelly. I don't know. It's the only one I recognize. No, I just feel like growing up and both of those were out kind of like in my high school phase. People talked about Bebop much more than they talked about Evangelion.
I think I should do a Sailor Moon Inuyasha. Would that be like a close poll right there?
Yeah, I think my age group, the girls kind of liked both.
Sailor Moon would win, though.
Probably. I think that one's a little more iconic as Sailor Moon. Like, everybody watched Sailor Moon, but only some people watched Inuyasha.
Would they be a better comparison instead? Because I can only think of, like, Dragon Ball Z, but that would destroy Sailor Moon.
Well, for sure. I'm going to think on that one, because at the time I watched Sailor Moon and I watched Cardcaptor Sakura, but I don't think enough people watch Cardcaptors either. I really think, like, your two most popular ones you're ever going to find are DBZ and Sailor Moon.
Right.
Like, that's it. So Sailor Moon would win. Sorry.
I'm still going to put it up.
You could do Inuyasha and Yu Yu Hakusho. I think that would be a close one.
Inuyasha would kill it.
I
think
so?
too, yeah. I did have a couple of close... The Goku and Vegeta one ended up being exactly the same number of votes. Goku and Vegeta 50%. It was like 16 and 16. I don't remember what it was. And I'm like, of course this would be like the closest poll right here. And I think OJ DM'd afterward like, oh, I would have voted for Vegeta. And I'm like, oh, that would have won the poll right there.
I would have voted for Vegeta.
That would have won the poll right there.
I don't do Instagrams. I don't know how to use it. Do you retweet on Instagram? What is that?
You just click on the button you want to vote for. Okay. Like right there on stories, you click on it.
But I tried.
Tap on it.
Okay. I'll try to be better. I say that every time. I won't be.
I also had the best teacher movie.
Okay.
And that one was a close one. It was between Lean On Me and Stand and Deliver. Stand and Deliver won by 1 vote.
Oh,
so
that's what
one.
I would have voted for.
And people kept DMing me like, oh, this is such a close one. I don't know. It's such a tough choice. Both great movies. We rewatched both recently. And I think, did we talk about it on here? How
I don't think so.
It basically, like, one... Lean On Me, for example, you get to see more of the progress of what Morgan Freeman is doing to actually make the school better. Like wiping out 25% of the students and kicking them out of the school. All the controversial shit he did. Beat up one of the students at one point that tries to knife him.
Right.
And he's like, come on! Morgan Freeman trying to be a badass. And then Stand to Deliver, you don't see that message, but instead, I guess, you get more of like the test prep and you get into the personal lives of the students more than Lean On Me.
Right. Well, and you get to see that kind of social aspect of it, the kind of racism that went in behind these students trying to pass this test.
The other one that the Instagram Brokettes were like, what the fuck? This is too, I can't. Ghostbusters and Back to the Future.
I think it's Back to the Future for me. Ghostbusters just never really caught my attention.
I want to say Ghostbusters 1. That one was like a week and a half ago or so. But that Back to the Future is mine too. And I don't know. I didn't grow up on Ghostbusters. It could be that. I saw it as a kid, but I didn't rewatch it as many times as I've seen Back to the Future. So Back to the Future is my choice. But the other poll, the last one I'll share here, is comic based between which is the Superman best ending. Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, or All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman.
That ended up winning.
Well, yeah, because it's the best.
You're like, I've read both. I know.
I was talking the movie.
Well, the movie's better than the comic for sure.
Right.
I agree. I think so. I have read Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and while that one has a lot more characters in the DC universe than All-Star Superman, I really like the way that I just like Lex Luthor so much in All-Star Superman that I love that. And Whatever Happened to Man Tomorrow kind of leaves it in a positive, like, oh, he's still alive, depowered, if I remember correctly, and kind of living his own life and starting a family type of thing.
Lame.
And All-Star Superman, he's fixing the fucking sun.
Yeah.
Like, it's awesome.
Probably dead, but fixing the sun.
Right. And I think they did do a sequel where, I don't know. I think he comes back.
That doesn't, I don't want to hear about it. Doesn't happen.
As you mentioned, we also got to see a couple of things. Cuphead went up on Netflix. I don't know what you thought of it, but I do like that it is basically Looney Tunes. It's classic cartoons, Looney Tunes, Mickey Mouse, maybe you might include in there. A lot of the plots that I'm like, these all look familiar, these episodes, and that's all right.
Definitely. So I was watching it with you, but also reading a romance novel at the same time because, 11 books. I'm way behind. Gotta work on that. But it very much gave me the feel of maybe kind of a cross between like Adventure Time, Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life. I got a lot of those feels just in the pacing and the voices of the characters and the different things. Watching it, I don't know why I expected it to be an adult show. I was kind of surprised it was for kids because I think there was still enough of that maturity in there that really adults would prefer it more than kids. But I did enjoy the art. I think that it's going to have a pretty big fan base. I've already seen some people on Facebook talking about how much they really enjoyed however many episodes they got to watch. And I know you said you enjoyed it too.
When I saw a preview of this on Twitter, there was the scene where with the Dice Man and he's talking to the devil. For some reason, that scene, even when I was rewatching it as we were watching, it's different in animation. It looks cleaner. It looks more 3D CGI. And I don't know why, but that's the clip I saw before I watched the show. And I'm like, okay, this is more like an Archer type of show. It's not like the video game where in the game, you see like the crackle of the old film on there, the muted colors, and it's all hand-drawn animation. But I was pleasantly surprised when I hit play on this, and I'm sure it's probably drawn on computer and then from there animated, and that's fine, but it has that look of old Looney Tunes. It looks like it was all completely hand-drawn. A lot of the expressions are very familiar to, like you said, Ren and Stimpy or old Looney Tunes. So I was really pleasantly surprised, and I will say, though, that that's literally all the show is, and it's not trying to be more. So if you want sort of mindless entertainment of like, here's a 15-minute skit of them trying to beat off these giant monstrous vegetable plants that are taking over the garden, okay, that's the whole skit. Like, you're not going to get anything more than that. And if you're okay with that, great. Leo saw a little bit of it. I think it's TVY7 is what the recommended age is. So I don't think it held his attention quite as much. Maybe the expressions are a little bit too intense sometimes with the characters. I don't know. I grew up on that stuff, so I don't mind it. But for him and kids are more used to the CGI, rounder characters, all of that. And this is very much like every character has sharp edges and everything like that. So I wouldn't recommend it to kids, but definitely if you're like me and you grew up on Looney Tunes, Tiny Toons, whatever it may be, this show should be up your alley. I don't know how long it can go, though, realistically, like 6 seasons of this, like just light comedy. I don't know how long I could do it even. I don't know if, like, I'm going to go see a season 2 if they make it. But beyond that, I'll kind of be like, okay, I get it. Like, I get what the show is. I get the joke.
Yeah, but I also think, to your point, it's kind of mindless entertainment. So a lot of people love to have TV on in the background when they're doing something. And so is this an easy show to put on while you're doing something else, while you're working from home, anything like that? Probably, because you don't really have to be fully focused to understand what's going on.
We also got to see Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust. So this is the sequel that came out in the 90s. It's up on YouTube. No one's claimed it or anything. It's just up there and rewatched it. And you asked me before, like, is there a love story? And I'm like, no. And I don't remember there being a love story, and there fucking is. Like,
yeah, there
that's
is.
The major
it was a great
point,
love story.
Was it great?
It was.
You liked it?
I did enjoy it. So we were watching it together, but I was also reading my vampire romance because, again, behind in my books. So this is what we watch TV and I read my books at the same time. So I was reading a vampire romance while I was watching a vampire romance, and it just made everything better. But yes, I kept tuning into the romance parts, and then they do some action-y thing, and I'm like, let me go back to my book.
It is an old anime, I guess. It would be. It's like 30 years old now.
Oh,
I guess
wow.
it would be, right? And I remember it being probably one of the first anime that I had seen aside from Pokemon. And that's where, because I didn't see Transformers, I didn't see G.I. Joe, and yes, those are anime, and I didn't grow up on those. But we had moved to our first house. My parents, we upgraded from an apartment when I was a kid to like a suburban home, and there was cable, and that was a big deal. And one of the first channels that I either turned on or that we went to, and it was Vampire Hunter D, and there's blood, and I'm like, oh shit. And I remember it being like kind of intense. Like I'm a kid trying to watch, and I didn't finish it or anything, but I was like, oh, probably shouldn't be watching this. And I never finished it until years later when I was a teen. And then now we rewatched it with you, and it's got cool pieces. It's got a cool world, and it's got some pretty iconic moments, like when he catches the arrow, and that's the cover of the DVD where he's up against the moon. But I did think that it was funny that near the end of the movie, that's when they started to add all these layers in there of like, oh, you don't want the vampire and the human to be together because they might make another Dampier. And that's who Vampire Hunter D is, a half vampire, half human. It's like, oh, that's cool. It adds to psychology. I wish we had known this an hour ago. Like it would have added more to it. Or at the end with Camilla, who is the villain of the movie, and it's like, okay, why is there bloodlust with her? Why is she trying to revive herself with human blood? And that's kind of thrown in at the end too. And it's like, and this. So to me, I was like, all right, there's some story issues. This is what it would be. Definitely not pacing. Animation's beautiful. Pacing's great. There's action, then dialogue, all of that. Not a lot of likable characters. I guess the two couple, the vampire and the girl, we don't know why they love each other so much, but they just do.
Just let them love each other.
And D himself, he's the same. Got that relationship with his hand, the parasite that he's forever cursed with.
Yes.
Were you thinking of like his hand jobs and whatnot? He can blow.
Relationship with his hand. Oh my God. What's going on? You know somebody made that movie too.
Oh, probably. We haven't gotten a third one yet, and we haven't gotten any more manga as far as I know. They did a novelization of a new story, I believe. 2 years ago, they tried to do a comic book called Mission to Mars, and only one issue came out, and then the whole thing was canceled. And I want to reread Mission to Mars because isn't that where they were going in Bloodlust, or were they going to the moon?
They didn't
just
say.
somewhere?
They were going to some night kingdom, is all they said, where it was always night. So probably the moon. If I had to guess, if it was always night.
Or, yeah, I don't know where. So I want to reread the first one and see if Mission to Mars is a sequel to Bloodlust, or if it just happens to be a part of the manga or novelization, something I don't know about.
Right.
So it was kind of neat, though, just to kind of revisit that old anime and watch a vampire love story together.
Right? It was great.
Last couple things I want to cover before we close out is there's still some time to vote for Army of the Dead as far as the Oscars fan favorite award that they're doing. Love the history behind it because it's speculated that because Spider-Man No Way It's Cinema did not get nominated under Best Picture, I don't know why it would be, but people expected, all these Spider-Man fans, they're like, that should have been nominated for Best Picture. They did this category called, all right, fine, this will probably give us more ratings, I don't know, let's have an Oscars fan favorite. And the people can vote in and tweet in and write in their vote for this award. And Zack Snyder's Justice League ended up topping out at number 1. And at that time, Spider-Man No Way It's Cinema was in second place, but the article said, I think it was on Variety, that it was by a large margin. So it wasn't even close that Zack Snyder's Justice League would have won. To the point where the Academy had to come out, and thankfully they did when they did, but they said the Snyder Cut is not eligible because it didn't come out in theaters. So
didn't we have Netflix movies that won a few years ago, though, that were nominated?
Yes, but they had a limited release in theaters so that they could then be nominated for things.
Okay.
So that's why Army of the Dead now is what we shifted to.
Okay.
So that had a limited theatrical release. We saw it in theaters. And we're like, okay, fine, Army of the Dead then. The other Zack Snyder movie that came out last year. And there's a Cinderella Amazon movie that like No Way Cinema is no longer in contention. Like it's not even I think it's in third or fourth place now. But the Cinderella movie and Army of the Dead, for some reason, I don't know how the Cinderella movie, but they were going back and forth between first and second place. Army of Dead has now surpassed the Cinderella movie, and there's still some time left to go. You can vote and tweet 20 times a day. You can also vote in through the website, and that'll all count. Couple things, you can't include emojis, you can't include GIFs or images. There's like weird restrictions. It can't be a quote tweet. It can't be a reply in a tweet. They don't count any of those. So it has to be its own standalone tweet. Army of the Dead, not in hashtag, just the title, very specific. And then hashtag Oscars fan favorites, hashtag sweepstakes. And you also got to follow at the Academy for it to count. A lot of bullshit, right? But, you know, it's working. And now that Army of the Dead overtook Cinderella as number one, articles are coming out of this controversial poll. Zack Snyder is rallying fans to vote for Army of the Dead. And we're all like, oh, now it's controversial because the Zack Snyder movie is winning? Not because if it had been Spider-Man,
nobody would care.
It wouldn't be controversial at all. Also, Pedo Gunn also rallied his pedo apologist fans to vote for The Suicide Squad. No one's going to vote for that shit. No. Like, as many people as went to theaters to see that movie are going to vote for this movie. Very few. And we had been rallying to vote for Army of the Dead before Zach even put up a Vero post. So he's not rallying anything. He's just like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? Like,
he woke up one day, what the fuck is this?
So we'll see if Army of the Dead ends up winning the Oscars, the first ever Oscars fan favorites award that they end up doing. I would not be shocked if there's some bullshit and they give it to Cinderella. If they come up with something to not give it to Zach, or if they cancel the award because it's not Spider-Man, I'm sure Disney's not happy about it.
No.
We're sure Warner Brothers isn't happy because they turned down Army of the Dead. They wouldn't make that movie, so he shopped it to Netflix, and now it's about to win a fucking Oscar.
Right.
So there's still time to vote in. Check it out. And more importantly, episode 500, we're nearing up on that. We're just a couple of weeks away. We are going to have a Q&A portion of the podcast in there. So if you have any questions, whether it's comics, superheroes, movies, who's your favorite, whatever, I'll even take those. DM them to us, email them to us, tweet them to us, whatever is your easiest way to communicate with us, send it over to us, and we may include it on episode number 500. So got to start putting that out now because I know some people are weeks behind on podcasts. I get it. I totally am. So I got to put that out as early as possible. There will be posts as well that do ask for these questions as we near number 500. And I'm still like, I think right now the plan is to try to get as many of the co-hosts on as possible and just have it be this free for all type of episode and kind of have fun with it.
Right. That sounds amazing.
But Palpa Kelly, I want to thank you for taking some time to be on this episode, sector number 497. And let them know where they can find you if they do want to contact you. I know you're not too active on Instagram or Twitter, but is it something you check every now and again if someone were to tag you?
Every once in a while. So Twitter sends me notifications. I check Instagram for Adam Levine. So I am occasionally on both of those things, but at Palpa Kelly, Kelly spelled with an I, is where you can find me on both of those platforms.
And to you on the other side, if you're finding at least 25 cents worth of entertainment of today's episode, if this episode is worth a quarter, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimbroke.com, because for as little as $1 a month, which again equals out to about a quarter an episode, you too can get the podcast early. You get special access to our Discord. There's a special Patreon Discord room just for backers. And you're helping us keep the podcast growing and moving and running because it is not free to upload this every week. So we do appreciate that help. That's once again at patreon.com/thereasonsimbroke. Thank you for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Palpa Kelly and Brocat Core. All will be well. I want to hear your take on the Ayer clip that came out, because Bobby was on last week when they released the Harley Quinn. Since then, there's been a slew of Ayer cut images, like behind the scenes, that have come out. I don't know where people are getting these from, probably David Ayer, but there's been all kinds of new material that's been releasing as of the last couple of days even. Behind the scenes pictures of those eye monsters, concept art of Steppenwolf coming out of that portal that Enchantress puts together. As we know that in the original script, she was under the influence of Steppenwolf and the Mother Boxes. And now we're seeing these pictures of Harley Quinn in a red and blue wedding dress, which is not in the theatrical cut of Suicide Squad. And the costume manager for that picture said that it was fun to make that costume, but that is also another part of the Ayer cut. So we have actors and people in the studio that are now calling it the Ayer cut as if maybe we're going to get it. But what do you think about, one, that clip that came out of a more abusive Joker, and two, this possible dream sequence or something, or a scene of Harley Quinn in a wedding outfit?
I enjoyed the clip. So I did enjoy Joker and Harley's relationship in the theatrical cut that we got, but that is also really not what their relationship is. So people who are legitimate fans and have followed the comics and different iterations of these characters know that it's very much a toxic, abusive relationship that Harley's just a part of and can't get out of because of whatever kind of insanity complex that she has. So the clip that we saw, I thought, was very reflective of what their relationship actually is, maybe a little bit darker than anything that we've ever seen. But again, in their origin story, her origin story, he pushed her out of a window and left her for dead. So Joker does not care. He sees her as a pawn. And was it cool to see the relationship a little bit different where, hey, maybe he actually cared? Absolutely. But that's not the reality. And so I'm very much for seeing it again, seeing this Ayer cut where, no, she's just a pawn and he does not care. And sure, he's going to go and rescue her because he knows he can continue to use her. And are you going to throw away something that you can continue to use and will kill for you and will do your dirty work for you so you can just sit back? And I mean, of course not. So that's probably his motivation behind all of that. But again, toxic relationship. He's going to make it her fault that she was kidnapped or, locked away and all this kind of stuff.
It makes me wonder how, the reason it was smart of them to put the film Exiles when they released that clip, whoever they got it from, because it changes so much of the movie just from that one little snippet, that change in relationship. Because now it's no longer him mourning her not having her, all of that. It's more like maybe his property type of thing, more of a respect thing to him to feed his ego.
Right.
That they have something that belongs to him, rather than something that he's trying to rescue. And there's a very different dynamic there. Towards the end of the film, I immediately thought of, and I didn't share it last week, but I remembered just now, David Ayer did release that ending clip where he breaks her out of prison. Not a clip, but a still image of Joker yelling. So that ending is, instead of let's go home and her being happy, it's probably him breaking her out and saying, you're back with me type of thing, yelling at her, whatever it may be. So it just completely changes and transforms the whole message of the movie. It would obviously change the ending to the film, no longer leaving on a high of the Joker rescuing Harley, that relationship. It's now it's a more ominous. And I think it's way different than what we're getting. All these people that are like, oh, it's the same movie, but some different scenes. One, if you hadn't learned from Snyder Cut, we know that's not the case. And this one, that alone is already changing the entire dynamic of some of the characters that we enjoy the most.
I think it makes the sacrifice that she makes for the Suicide Squad, for this team, even more impactful because she's been in such a toxic place where she's done everything for this person. And now she's finding people who support her and genuinely care about her. And she's making that sacrifice for them and maybe even coming into her own person, right? Like we've always talked about, is Harley stepping away from the Joker, and who is she then? Because we very rarely get to see that in, I think, a realistic way. So that does definitely change the feeling of her forming into this group as well.
Let's not forget the Joker shows up in that Enchantress final fight at the end. So he's there when she chooses, we think she does the same thing in the Ayer cut of choosing the Suicide Squad over the Enchantress's wish, which is no longer bring back my pudding. It's now, I don't know, who knows what her wish would be.
Right. And maybe that's where we do get to see the wedding dress. Maybe that's the point of, hey, this is what, we do get to see the scene of her with the kids, but maybe it's the wedding. Maybe that's just extended of, you don't just have kids, you get the wedding that you've always wanted and all these different things. I think that's pretty cool. The more we can see of Harley and the Joker in whatever way it is, I enjoy it. I do really like the characters as crazy and toxic and everything else that they are. I think it's a really interesting dynamic between the two and so much that you can unravel. So just to give them more depth and to have different scenes and to have things like a wedding and having children and all those kind of things just builds those layers and more to unpack.
So release the Ayer cut, I think?
I think,
release the Ayer cut.
I mean, yeah.